So we continue on with Lesson 5, 11 chapters in Genesis. We center our page in God. To the right, we see the names used for God: El Shaddai, or the God of the mountain; Elohim, the unspeakable, YHWH, revealed to Moses; and El Eloi Israel, God, the God of Israel. God is establishing not just a people, but a family that begins with Abraham, his son Isaac, and the two sons of Isaac and Rebekah. So we continue the genealogical chart up in the left-hand corner. We recall that Abraham sends his only son Isaac back to the roots of his family to marry a second cousin, Rebekah, and her brother Laban he will get to know quite well. Rebekah and Isaac have the two sons, Esau and Jacob. And again, Isaac sends Jacob back to the roots of his family to live in with Laban, his cousin, and eventually to marry Laban's two daughters, Rachel and Leah. Rachel is barren, although eventually she does have two sons, and Leah has a number of sons, and Dinah is also mentioned. She may have had other daughters, but Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun will join Joseph and Benjamin, and then Rachel will hand over Bilhah, her maid, so that Jacob can bring two more sons into the family, Dan and Naphtali, and Leah, in competition, will give her maid Zilpah to Jacob for two more sons, Gad and Asher. And here are the 12 tribes of the nation as it will become, or a family that God is establishing out of the family of Abraham. This family has customs. They are Semites, and in the center we are listing some of the things that make this family unique and is part of why God chose them. Because God has instilled in this people principles upon which He can build a family and begin salvation history that will result in the final family of God. These people are free. They are not under the rigid authority of either the Egyptians' priests and pharaohs, nor the same kind of rigid authority to the east of them, which would be the country of Babylon or Sumer. No, they are nomads. They are under no rigid authority. So God can deal with them under the freedom of the sky. And therefore they are mobile. They can be separated and formed as a very special family. They assume that patriarchy is God's will as it is. It's a remnant in the fallen world of the original order. Yes, patriarchy does assume some prerogatives that are not part of God's original order, but still it is a remnant and it's usable. What these people name and word and blessing are especially powerful. They go out to do what they say. This is something that God will build on about His own word in its power. They have very few cultural laws, although they do have blood revenge, and they believe in the sacredness of blood, and they use altars and sacrifice and circumcision, which God infuses with new meaning as time goes on. For all of these people, fruitfulness of the body is highly valued. It will take these first 3 generations for God to establish that it will take 3, not just a man and a woman, but also God for fruitfulness. Because we'll find that these first 3 generations, God picks out a barren woman. Very strange. Now, on either side of this center section, we have the fathers on the left and the mothers on the right. Fathers receive promises in theophanies with God. He reveals Himself to them in dramatic occurrences, and in those promises He establishes covenants with them and gives them governance. We saw this with Abraham. He makes Abraham His friend. Then Abraham's son Isaac receives those same promises repeated. And Isaac's son Jacob also has promises given to him. I will be with you. He has 2 occasions when he meets God face to face, Bethuel and Penuel. Esau, the other brother, is just out of order. He has wrong marriages with Hittite women. He has no respect for his birthright, for what it means. He trades it off for a sensual expedient. So he is outside now of the promises of God. But Jacob will be the father of Israel. On the other side, we have the miracle that takes place in the woman. There is a great deal of misinformation about the Old Testament woman, thinking of her as a lackey or a slave, which is not true. If you think carefully about the respect that Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah have by their husbands, we find that she is respected and free. She is loved. She is an individual, a particular person, not just an anonymous figure that bears babies. She is resourceful for gaining the fruitfulness that she believes is her right and her inheritance. She seeks insight. We see how Rebekah goes to seek more of God's will for her. She is protected by God when she is put into harems. God honors her as a special woman. She makes decisions, and their husbands listen to them. We see how Isaac honors Rebekah, and how Jacob gets permission from Rachel and Leah to leave and to go back to his inheritance with his father. So don't be swayed by these arguments that the Old Testament woman was not honored, for that isn't true. But what is the difference between the fathers and the mothers? God deals differently with them. External to the fathers is the relationship they have with God. It's an external thing that comes to them in making a covenant, being given governance. Whereas for the mothers, it's an internal miracle of fruitfulness, all going back to the promise Eve was given, that it would be woman's seed to overcome evil. Woman's seed. We don't generally think of it that way. We think it is the male seed that stimulates fruitfulness. But in these cases, God has to intervene as a third person to stimulate the fruitfulness of these mothers. Therefore, when we come to these women, we put a little flag over them. They are barren, and the little flag tells us that this woman is a barren woman. She is a chosen woman. She is a free woman. She has great worth, but she is barren. Sarah conceives only by the intervention of God. Rebekah the same. She is barren, yet Rebekah is a chosen woman. When the servant goes back to the family to find that woman, this particular woman is pointed out to him. This is the one that God intends, a barren woman. Well, Isaac must intercede for Rebekah, pray for her, and God answers the prayer. God is the third person. And Rebekah then goes, when she's pregnant, and she finds that they're contending within her, she goes to an oracle. She's a seeker of insight, even though that oracle, at this point in the history of Israel, is not perhaps even a God believer. He's somebody on the outside. But God uses him to explain to Rebekah what is happening within her. Then the next of the two women, Rachel and Leah, sisters, who married Jacob. And the important one, Rachel, is barren. Why is she the important one? She only has 2 children. Well, her son Joseph, her fruit, will save all of the brothers. We must always keep in mind then that the principles that God is building on with these Semite people are essential for salvation history, and that the fathers and the mothers are chosen people that God is using to establish a family that will take salvation history forward.